Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The first night of the NFL draft is over, and the Eagles traded up one spot to number 31. And with that 31st overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles selected linebacker Jihaad Campbell out of Alabama. Now, we'll get to breaking down Jihaad Campbell in just a moment, but just a quick overview of the whole draft, which didn't seem all that surprising. There was not a lot of moving around. There was a lot of just progressing down the draft board and progressing down the order and players getting picked by teams in order. There were, again, just not a ton of trades. There were a couple early on. The Jaguars traded up to the second overall pick, swapped with the Cleveland Browns. And then the Giants traded back into the first round after they made their pick of Abdul Carter, which not the biggest fan of seeing him go to a division rival, but that's what happens, and maybe in a couple years he'll be with the Philadelphia Eagles. Who knows? But the Giants also picked Jackson Dart for a quarterback. With their trade, then the Atlanta Falcons traded and was able to get James Pierce, who was another player that I was looking at going into this draft. But ultimately, there really weren't a ton of surprises, so to speak, in terms of players who should have gone but didn't. There was a lot of hype about Shedeur Sanders, who was not picked at all in the first round, and he's going to go to potentially the second round, maybe the third round. We'll see what happens there. But there was definitely not a pick that was like Michael Penix Jr. was for the Atlanta Falcons last season, which was a befuddling pick and didn't make a lot of sense at surface value for them, even though it made me look very good because I had a gut feeling that the first half of the top 10, top 12 draft picks would be quarterbacks last season. Not the case this time. Only a couple of quarterbacks went in the first round at all. Certainly only one in the top 10 in Cam Ward going to the Tennessee Titans. But this was just a relatively straightforward, relatively simple day for most fans. In fact, probably the biggest surprise was the fact that the Green Bay Packers, who were the host of the NFL draft this year, for the first time in 23 years picked a wide receiver in the first round. They went with Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. And that's part of the fun of the draft, is you get to make your picks and you get to make your guesses as to which team needs what and who's going to get what and what have you. But there were definitely a few things that made you raise a couple eyebrows, and certainly in the case of Abdul Carter going to the New York Giants, made you have a little bit of a pit in your stomach as an Eagles fan. Maybe not so much because Abdul Carter is going to be a problem for the Eagles' offensive line. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case if he's playing for the Giants. More so the fact that you see somebody who's grown up an Eagles fan having to play for an opposing team, and especially a division rival. But getting back to this Jihaad Campbell pick, and in order to make it happen, the Eagles did have to trade up a little bit. The Eagles were actually looking at a number of other targets before trading into the number 31 overall. Notably, the LA Chargers were a potential trade target, but none of those panned out until the Eagles and the Chiefs decided to swap picks, because I guess the Eagles must have felt bad that the Kansas City Chiefs weren't picking at number 32, which is where they're accustomed to picking. Instead, the Philadelphia Eagles had that number 32 overall pick, so why not just do a little bit of a pick swap? The Eagles also threw in the number 164 overall pick, which is a fifth rounder. The Eagles have a whole bunch of fifth round picks, so I'm not really opposed to the trade if the real reason is that other teams might have been trying to trade back into the first round, would have prevented that pick from occurring. And with that 31st pick, the Eagles got Jihaad Campbell, who, again, I'm a fan of this pick. Jihaad Campbell was one of the top 25 players, widely mocked, definitely expected to go well before number 31 overall. Ultimately, the Eagles just allowed him to fall into their lap, maybe did a little bit of backroom dealing to make sure that they were in the right position for him to fall there, and the Eagles were able to nab him again much, much, much later than expected. He was widely expected to go probably 14, 15, definitely in the top 25. Now, Campbell was compared on NFL Network to Edgerrin Cooper, who went to the Green Bay Packers last season. Edgerrin Cooper had a combined 77 tackles for the Green Bay Packers, 3.5 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss, 7 quarterback hits, 1 pick, and 1 forced fumble, as well as 2 fumble recoveries. So if he's being compared to an Edgerrin Cooper kind of player, then that's going to be a really, really solid performance. So we'll see what winds up happening there. I'm expecting that the Eagles will utilize him in the off-ball linebacker position, which is going to be crucial because Nakobe Dean is likely going to be missing some time to start the 2025 season. Nakobe Dean has been injury-prone over the course of the last several seasons, and while he played a good chunk of 24 to 25, unfortunately, towards the end of that season and during the Eagles' playoff run and ultimate Super Bowl winning playoff run, Nakobe Dean wound up sustaining a torn patellar tendon, so that created a need for Campbell at linebacker. I'm sure Vic Fangio had a hand in this. This is the first time that the Eagles have drafted an off-ball linebacker in the first round since 1979, according to Brandon Lee Gouton over at Bleeding Green Nation. And this was just a little bit of a crazy happenstance that the Eagles were able to get somebody in from Alabama at that spot. Now, before the draft, I was able to catch up with ESPN NFL draft analyst Field Yates, who had Jihaad Campbell actually mocked to the Eagles at number 32 earlier in April. This is what he had to say about Campbell and how he fits in with a Vic Fangio defense.
So with Jihaad Campbell, it's speed, it's instincts, it's intelligence, and it's versatility. The speed stuck out. He ran at the combine very fast. I mean, there's 4.5 something at the combine. He can absolutely fly around. Instincts are great. He's a very intelligent player. Those two things kind of tie into each other. The versatility. He does have pass rushing ability. He had, I think, 4.5 this past year. And whether it was blitzing or whether it was just lining up as an edge rusher, he can do both of those things. You know, Zach Bond, who is going to forever be mentioned as like an Eagles linebacker that you want to try to build an archetype of. What was he prior to being in Philly? He was an edge rusher. He was a guy who played more with his hand, or not his hand in the dirt, but, you know, metaphorically, the kind of guy that you just want to line up and have him pin his ears back and go. And now he's become this all-pro level inside linebacker.
And you could tell that Jihaad Campbell was extremely excited to be going to the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. And he had a really strong message to Eagles fans as he walked across that stage, accepted his jersey, and was ready to get to work.
Nothing will be possible, you know, without the Most High, you feel what I'm saying, and my family and my friends and, you know, just everybody supporting me, you know, and just paving the way for me and mentoring me and guiding me, you know, throughout my whole journey. So shout out to everybody back at home, man. I'm coming back home. Philly, y'all know what's up. We got to turn up. We got to get lit. We got to win another freaking Super Bowl next year, man. It's on.
So overall, again, love this pick by the Eagles for Jihaad Campbell. Howie is cooking. This is his time. This is his season. And he is getting this team ready so that they can defend their Vince Lombardi trophy, defend their Super Bowl title. But let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your thoughts about this pick by the Philadelphia Eagles, number 31 overall, Jihaad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama? What are your thoughts about him? What are your thoughts about this pick? Where do you see the Eagles going with the remaining days of the NFL draft? We'll bring you nightly recaps following each round of the NFL draft. We'll be bringing you nightly recaps following each day of the NFL draft, so you can stay tuned for the NFL draft coverage tomorrow evening, as well as on Saturday to round things out. But as always, let me know what your thoughts are, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing it to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage, and if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles!